All right, welcome back to our notes today. I wanted to remind you guys, we did all of these yesterday, but you should be getting out your Unit 4 notes, China Dynasty's student notes. If you would get those out, we ended yesterday on the Qin Dynasty, which is right here. Yeah. The Qin Dynasty is my most favorite because I think it's the most interesting. So I'm going to tell you about it, and hopefully you'll enjoy yourselves. The Qin Dynasty was really, really big. Basically what happened is after this period of warring states that we talked about yesterday, remember we talked about this, out came one of the most powerful families, which was the Qin Dynasty. So this dynasty was known for a brutal ruler. His name is Shi Huangdi. And Shi Huangdi was known for several things, but one of the things we'll talk about more on Monday. He was very, very proud of himself. And he was very brutal because he actually was the first to gain any sort of major power after this period of warring states. He was the very first emperor of the Qin Dynasty. So he basically took all of the chaos and made it into a dynasty. He created an empire, which is really, really hard to do. Make sure you're writing this down in your notes, please. Fill out the red parts and pause if you need to. Something I want to point out on this map. If you'll notice, right around this area in the top left-hand corner, you will notice that it says the Great Wall. Could this be the Great Wall of China? Yes. This was the earliest parts of the Great Wall of China. The Qin Dynasty actually was part of building it. So what did they build? The Great Wall of China. Yes, they started the construction. They built it to prevent invaders from the north from coming down and harming them. They were the ones who believed that they could have protection from that. And they kind of tore down the other walls and kept the Great Wall. This was the period of unification for China. Remember that there was a long period where people were terrified to go outside because everybody was warring and fighting each other. But not here. Everybody's at peace now, which is kind of weird because I'm going to tell you more about the history of it, but it kind of gets a little not great. So they did unify, but they also had some really cool inventions. Gunpowder, okay, and they made modern paper. They had printing, not printing in the sense that we know it, but for the printing press they would use to make prints, and the compass to help navigate, which is very important for trade. If you need to pause and let them write this down for 2 to 3 minutes, go for it. All right. This is where it gets a little rough. Okay, the Qin Dynasty was the shortest. They didn't even make it really 2 decades of full power. And the reason why that is that the emperor was not a very liked guy. The emperor actually ordered the execution of any person that talked against him. So you could say, I'm not really a big fan of our emperor, and then you would die. Okay, people would be executed for that. They also ordered book burning. So if there was a book that said something they didn't like, toss it out, we're done here. Which, made people feel kind of like, wait, maybe this isn't the best. People started becoming very paranoid for their safety and their possessions and their family members. They were scared, right? So what happened? They led a massive revolt. They took all these peasants, all these people who were low down on that social hierarchy that we've talked about. They all came together, and there was a lot of them, and they overthrew the government. They overthrew the government with their army. because they were so angry. And guess what? That family, the Qin dynasty, the Qin family, they were out of here. They were gone. Everybody came up against them and they were gone. On Monday, we will talk about the terracotta warriors. It's also one of my favorite things to teach, so stay tuned for that. Monday's going to be great. All right. So now I want you to rate yourself in the Qin dynasty. How would you rate yourself as happiness level if you were there during the time of his rule? Remember, 1 means that I'm leaving, don't want to stay here, and 10 means I would stay. I like this place, it's nice. And then please give your reasoning. And I'm going to give you, or the sub's going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to fill this out. So go ahead and pause the video and we'll move on. All right, the very last dynasty, the mega dynasty, as I call it. This is the Han dynasty. The Han dynasty was massive. If you look at this map, it pretty much took up all of China. This is where we're going to start to see China's shape come into play. It basically kind of expanded past China. It went into parts of Korea. It went into parts of Indochina and Central Asia. And it was a really thriving time for China. Basically, they opposed this thing called legalism. And legalism is something we'll talk about more next week. But legalism is this idea that everybody must follow every rule. And it's a very strict type of ruling style. They didn't really subscribe to that in the Han dynasty. They were kind of just more like, do what you need to do, whatever. They weren't that strict as a government. That family, the Han family that led the dynasty, they just kind of let people do what they wanted to do with some laws, of course. And the reason that that was good for them is it actually worked out well because it was the golden age of China. Known as the golden age because I will explain a little bit more, but it was a really great time. Everybody was expanding. They have control of all the major rivers. It was very good. Go ahead and pause if you need more time to write. So what do they contribute? Well, they had one of the largest trade routes of all time. Something called the Silk Road was developed. And no, I know what you're thinking. Wait, a road made of silk. Yeah, no, that's not what it is. The Silk Road was basically just a trade route that they would use to get to the rest of the world and give all their exports. Remember on Tuesday, we talked about how China is one of the lead exporter countries. Well, guess what? In the Han Dynasty, that was still true. They made the Silk Road and they produced something called silk, which is this really nice fabric that feels really nice on your skin. And they would send it to all these different parts of the world. They also invented the seismoscope, the rudder, which steers boats. That comes into play with trade. And then a civil service test. A civil service test, how I would describe it. Okay, I actually had to take a civil service test to do my job. Basically, it's a test saying, do you have the skills and the knowledge to do a job that we're about to give you, right? So as a teacher, I had to take 4 different tests in order to become a teacher. And guess what? I passed all of them in the first try. So yay me. They had civil service tests back in ancient China in order to get certain jobs. And then acupuncture became popular. This is known as an ancient Chinese technique that relieves pain by putting needles into your skin. And they're very, very small needles. You can barely feel them, but they're supposed to relieve pressure and pain. And it's very cool if you've ever had it done. Go ahead and pause the video if you need more time to write. And the Han Dynasty comes to an end. And I know it's very sad, right? It was a good time. But again, they got too big for their own good. They started expanding out and they didn't have enough people to rule. Remember, they don't have telephones to rule. They don't have Zoom. They don't have any of that. So because they started expanding, they didn't have enough people to rule. And therefore, these nomadic people, these people called, you might have heard it, the Huns. Who's heard of the Huns? Who's heard of the Huns? From Mulan, yes, from Mulan. The Huns were basically this group of people that moved around all the time and took over land. And they were mean people. They would take over just about anything. So the Han Dynasty ended on a note that we're all very familiar with the Huns destroying them. And the Huns came in and took over. And they came in from the north, by the way. So that wall that they built didn't keep them out. Okay, so how would you rate yourself in the Han Dynasty? Is this the best dynasty, the worst dynasty? It's up to you to decide. Happiness level, and then the reason why. How would you rate this? Would you rate it a 1, like you didn't like it, or a 10, like I would stay, it's nice. And then please put your reasoning as well. And go ahead and pause if the kids need more time. All right, it's time to discuss. In your groups, in your color groups, I want you to discuss the pros and the cons of each dynasty. I want your group to come up with which one was the best and which one was the worst. Go ahead and review your notes for that if you need, and be ready to share out in 3 minutes, okay? And you're gonna share out to the substitute, and they're gonna take over from here. Just as a reminder, you should be following expectations the whole time. Remember that the substitute is going to let me know if you are not following those expectations. All right, go ahead and start with your groups. I will see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.